I like trains. Trains are the most civilized, comfortable, and efficient mode of transportation, and they're just cool as fuck. Here in Toronto, Canada, we have a commuter train system called the GO train. It connects downtown Toronto with the suburbs, providing public transit for rush hour commuters. The GO trains are very clean, comfortable, and quiet. They have free Wi-Fi and outlets to charge your phone. They're almost always on time, and the customer service is amazing. Some lines have express trains in addition to local trains, which makes going longer distances much faster. My favorite part is that unlike the subway, which is mostly underground, the GO train is fully above ground, which means I can look at the views outside the window instead of the ugly reflection of my face. When you look at all trips made into downtown Toronto from the suburbs, 67% are made using the GO train and only 20% are by car. GO Transit clearly does a great job as a commuter rail system. But the GO train isn't really useful if you're not a commuter going downtown. Unlike the 1960s when GO Transit was created, the majority of trips people make nowadays are from suburbs to other suburbs, not downtown. That's why Highway 401, which doesn't go anywhere near downtown, is the busiest highway in North America. So when you look at all trips made from suburbs to other suburbs, nobody takes the GO train while 89% of people drive. The main reason is that all the lines converge at Union Station in downtown Toronto, which means if you want to go across the suburbs from one line to another, you still have to make a detour all the way down to Union. This design assumes that everyone needs to go downtown, even though most trips people make nowadays are not downtown. GO Transit also has a regional bus network called the GO Bus, and unlike the GO Train, these buses do connect suburbs together. But they get stuck in the same highway traffic as all the cars, so they aren't really the best alternative. What makes this even worse is that Union is basically the only station in all of downtown Toronto. GO Transit should have more downtown stations and transit hubs to spread people out and connect more neighborhoods, but instead, everyone has to funnel through Union Station, which was not built to handle this many people. The platforms at Union were built in the 1920s and they're extremely narrow. So after a giant GO train drops off thousands of passengers, they instantly get overcrowded. This is obviously really dangerous, but it also takes a really long time for crowds to exit the platform. There have been cases where people at Union were run over to death by a train, and in response, GO Transit is always telling people to stand well back from the yellow line. But at Union Station during rush hour, that's practically impossible. This is why trains arriving or departing Union have to crawl through really slowly, which is why simply approaching Union Station takes up at least 5 minutes of your entire trip. It's also why instead of waiting for the train on the platform, you have to wait in a concourse before getting called up to your train when it arrives. The departure boards will show what platform your train will arrive on 10 minutes before it departs. And so you basically have to stare at the screen, wait for the platform number to be called, before everyone rushes up there all at the same time. Trains are also not that frequent outside of rush hour. They come every 10 to 15 minutes during the morning and afternoon, but during the rest of the day, they only come every 30 to 60 minutes. This is partly because of Union Station. The awkward boarding process and the overcrowded platforms result in trains stopping for a really long time, which bottlenecks the entire system. They simply can't run trains too frequently because in the end, they all have to fit into Union Station, which doesn't have enough capacity. Another reason is that back when GO Transit was first created, they used old railroads owned by freight train companies instead of building their own tracks. This saved a lot of time and money, but it meant that freight trains always got priority. This is still the case today on a few lines like the Milton line, which can only run trains on weekdays during rush hour, despite being the 4th busiest line on the entire network. And even though GO Transit now has ownership over most of their other tracks, the infrastructure is still too outdated to run trains more frequently. For example, several lines are still single-tracked, which means trains going in opposite directions can only pass each other at certain points. This reduces frequencies because you need to keep trains really far apart so that they can pass each other. The tracks are also not electrified, which means GO trains are still diesel-powered. Diesel trains are really dirty and loud, but they also take a really long time to speed up and slow down, which increases travel times and reduces frequencies. The signals, which prevent trains from crashing into each other, were designed for long freight trains, which means GO trains are forced to stay further apart than necessary. And stations don't have level boarding, which means it takes longer for people to get on and off the train. Because freight trains needed to pass through stations, the platforms were built really low, which is why you need to climb a giant step to board the train. For people with baby strollers and wheelchairs, there's an elevated section of the platform where the accessibility coach located at the fifth car of the train will stop. Here, a customer service ambassador will step out and manually place down a ramp to fill in the gap. This whole process slows down trips and reduces frequencies by increasing the dwell time, which is the amount of time a train spends at a station. Another problem with using old tracks is that the lines don't always directly connect with the rest of the transit network. This sometimes results in a huge gap between a GO station and a subway station that requires a long walk to transfer between them. This wasn't really an issue back in the day because GO Transit was initially created as a way to relieve traffic on the congested highways. The government realized that building a subsidized train system would be cheaper than expanding roads, so the entire system was built primarily for car drivers to park their car at a station and take the train downtown. In Toronto, buses are directly integrated with subway stations, which allows people to transfer onto a bus from the subway without leaving the station. But the placement of GO stations were chosen based on highway and parking access rather than transit access. For example, Agincourt Station was built a few hundred meters north of a major bus route, and the building is oriented towards the parking lot. So getting to the nearby bus stop requires a pretty long and unpleasant walk, while people driving can just step out and get into their car. This is also the case at Old Comer Station, and yes, that's the actual name. The platforms were built several hundred meters north of the main road to provide access to the parking lot. But that means getting to the nearby bus stop requires a long walk down the sketchy path and potentially across the shitty pedestrian bridge. But hey, at least you get some great views of all this traffic. This park and ride model may have been fine back in the 1960s when the population was still pretty small, but for transit to succeed in a big city, it needs better land use. The area surrounding a train station is some of the most valuable land in the whole city, because that's what people can easily access on foot when they get off the train. This area should be full of homes, shops, and offices that can easily be accessed on foot. But instead, GO Transit uses this land for massive parking lots and parking garages. Stations are located within hostile car-centric environments where you have to walk really long distances to get anywhere. GO Transit is actually the largest provider of free parking in the whole province of Ontario, with more parking spaces than Toronto Parking Authority or any major real estate developer. And all this free parking is completely free. These monumental parking lots and garages cost tens of millions of dollars to build, and they're all funded by taxes and fares. That means everyone is paying for all this parking. Even if you walk, cycle, or take transit to the GO station, you're still subsidizing all this parking for the suburbanites who drive. As I mentioned in my previous video, the dependence on cars is the main reason why suburbanites have such a high carbon footprint compared to city dwellers. Not to mention, car dependency has tons of consequences on our health, safety, and finances. Traffic congestion has also become a pervasive issue in Toronto, and one big reason is that transit has barely improved at all since the early 2000s, while the population has grown significantly, mostly in the outer suburbs where everyone has to drive. But instead of promoting sustainable and productive urban development, the GO train is still stuck in the 1960s when the car was seen as the future. It's still just another subsidy for the high-carbon, car-centric lifestyle. No other station on the GO train network represents this better than Bloomington Station, the newest station on the GO train network. Built in 2021, it achieved a LEED Gold certification by having solar panels, LED lights, and a green stormwater pond, helping to preserve the surrounding wetlands. The parking lot also has a permeable surface, which allows rainwater to seep through. All these eco-friendly features sound pretty nice, but this $80 million station is literally in the middle of nowhere, only accessible by car. Like always, it has a massive parking garage and a surface parking lot with over 1,000 parking spaces. The line that this station serves only runs 9 trains per day and doesn't operate outside of weekday rush hours. The station has a massive bus terminal, but barely any buses actually stop here. The nearest bus stop that has frequent service is over an hour's walk away, but there aren't even any sidewalks on this 5-lane road. And this is not like other train stations where a new city is planned to get built later. Bloomington was built in the Green Belt, a protective band of green space where development is completely prohibited. That means it will never be surrounded by walkable neighborhoods, let alone any neighborhood. So what's ironic here is that the station was built in a protected area where development is restricted. But just a few kilometers down the road, a new suburban subdivision with 3 car garage homes are getting built. Thankfully, GO Transit is slowly improving as trains have started running more and more frequently outside of rush hour. Just last year, service on the Lakeshore East line got increased to every 15 minutes during weekends. Also, more housing is starting to get built near stations. Here at Danforth Station, this massive condo is going up right beside the platforms where there used to be a self-storage facility. But the biggest improvement will be the GO Expansion project, which will transform most of the GO train network into a world-class regional rail system where trains run at least every 15 minutes throughout the entire day. This is already normal in other parts of the world like in Tokyo, where the regional trains run so frequently that you don't need to check a schedule. You can just show up at the station and you know the next train will come in a few minutes. To achieve this, the tracks and signals are getting upgraded, but most importantly, the trains are getting electrified, which will make them 1,000,000 times faster. New stations are being added, especially within Toronto, and existing stations are getting completely upgraded to look like modern train stations. In the past, platforms were completely exposed to bad weather, and all they had were some tiny shelters. But now, full canopies cover the entire platform, and they have enclosed waiting rooms with heaters so that people can stay warm in the winter. There's some nice parking areas for bicycles, and some stations now have fully integrated bus terminals so that people can wait for the bus without leaving the station. These new stations are also future-proof so that in the future, the platforms can be raised to the height of the train. That's why these concrete bases look really tall. This would finally provide level boarding and they can get rid of that stupid accessibility ramp, which will save about 30 seconds at every stop. The biggest station upgrade is Union Station, which has been perpetually under construction for the last 10 years. In 2015, the York Concourse was opened, which provided a bigger space to wait for GO trains. Below that, a new food court was built just 3 years later. In 2020, a new modern bus terminal was opened, which turned Union into a central hub for all intercity buses. And then in 2021, the Bay Concourse finished renovations, which means there are now 2 big modern concourses to serve GO trains. Union is now a very nice and modern train station, and as it should, because this is literally the second busiest train station in all of North America. But even more work is still being done to expand the station and fix the bottlenecks. Currently, they're building a 3rd concourse at the south end of the station, along with new wider platforms. These new platforms will reduce dwell times and speed up trains as they enter and depart from the station, which will significantly expand its capacity. Once again, GO Expansion will have trains running at least every 15 minutes all day on the core parts of the network. But during rush hour, trains will supposedly run every 3 to 8 minutes, which is insane. That will basically turn the GO train into an express regional subway, just like trains in other parts of the world. But that's assuming everything goes to plan, cause unfortunately progress on GO expansion has been moving at a really slow pace. It's been over a decade since the project was first introduced, and it feels like we're still getting started. Apparently, the plans to electrify the GO trains are being delayed by, and I kid you not, the old train shed at Union Station. This 100-year-old metal shed is apparently a few inches too low for the electrical wires that will power the trains, and they can't remove it because Union Station is a National Historic Site. Oh, you have to be fucking kidding me. Look, I'm all for historical preservation, but when it gets in the way of the most important transit project in Canadian history, yeah, fuck your historical preservation. In fact, part of the train shed has already been replaced by this glass canopy, which feels so much nicer and spacious than standing under this old rickety-ass metal shed. So we might as well just get rid of this shed completely. Move it somewhere else, put it in a museum where it belongs, and get on to electrifying the damn trains. The whole project has also been terribly mismanaged. Metrolinx, the government agency that runs GO Transit, partnered with several companies to design, build, and operate the new GO trains. One such company was Deutsche Bahn, the national rail operator in Germany. But a great article recently came out explaining how the relationship between Metrolinx and Deutsche Bahn went completely off the rails. As a European train operator, Deutsche Bahn wanted the GO train to become a European-style regional rail system, like the German S-Bahn or the Paris RER, which would push GO Transit up to world standards. But the people in charge at Metrolinx had different views. According to multiple sources, which include Metrolinx employees, they were stubborn about changing the way they ran GO trains. Apparently, the senior managers are a bunch of old people who have been working in the rail industry for a long time, and so they simply can't imagine doing things differently. According to one source, the people at GO Transit think that running trains more frequently is a waste of money. Excuse me? Like, anyone who has taken a train in Japan or Switzerland or anywhere in Europe and East Asia knows how good trains can be. But apparently the senior employees at Metrolinx just cannot fathom this because they've spent their whole lives working with trains from the 1960s. Their mindset is just as outdated as the trains themselves. So Metrolinx fired Deutsche Bahn from the entire project, and now they've settled on a minimum viable product, which is basically a watered-down version of the original plan. Keep in mind, it's been 10 years since the project started. Now, to be clear, GO expansion is still happening. Trains are still getting electrified, and they will run at least every 15 minutes. Hopefully. So I have no doubt that in the future, the GO train will be a lot better than it is now. But what's not so clear anymore is how wrinkly my skin will be once the project is completed. And by the time it is finished, will it be enough? The GO train was very successful at managing a city of the 1960s, but now the people in charge just need to open their minds and modernize it so that it can actually manage a city of the 21st century. Thanks for watching today's video. This one took a long time because of all the research and all the footage that I had to film. But if you want extra content as well as a behind the scenes look at how I make my videos, I just released a gear/setup tour on my Patreon where I show everything that I use to film, edit, and create these videos. You can watch this video for just $1 a month, and you're helping to support me and make this whole channel financially viable. But anyways, I have a train to catch, so I'll see you guys next time.